What's up, Team 116? It's time to continue our journey through the Bible. Last week we started Exodus, seeing how God delivered his people from 400 years of slavery to the Egyptians after Joseph's time, raising Moses up to lead their deliverance journey. This week we're actually going to finish up the rest of Exodus as we see how God starts preparing them to receive that promised blessing of living in the promised land. And we'll also see why he's preparing them, why they're not quite ready yet to receive his promised blessing. So check out this short clip, then follow the instructions on the screen, and I'll see you in a bit.
The Israelites set out on a long desert journey back to their homeland. God guided them with a pillar of fire at night and a cloud by day. As the Israelites set up camp at the base of Mount Sinai, a dark cloud covered the mountaintop. Thunder boomed and lightning filled the sky. Terrified, the people backed away from the mountain, but Moses climbed up into the dark cloud. The ground began to shake, and God spoke to Moses from a blazing fire on the mountaintop. "Here is how my people should live. Don't worship anything but me. Don't misuse or disrespect my name. Set aside a day each week to rest. Honor your parents. Don't murder, steal, or lie. Live purely and faithfully. Don't lust after someone else's spouse or their possessions." When Moses told the people these commands, they said, "We'll do everything God said." On the mountaintop, God gave him stone tablets detailing the laws and commands inscribed by God's own finger. When Moses returned to their camp, he found the Israelites in a wild party, worshiping a golden idol they'd made. The people said, "We want to follow a God that we can see." Burning with anger, Moses threw the tablets, breaking them into pieces. Then he ground their idol into powder, mixed it with water, and made them drink it. Moses begged God to forgive his people. God said to him, "I'm full of compassion and love and slow to get angry. If my people obey my commands, then I'll show my power through them." After giving Moses a new set of tablets, God said, "Build a special place for me to live among the people I love." So Moses gathered the very best craftsmen and built a sacred tent called a tabernacle in the center of their camp. When God was present inside the tent, a cloud appeared above it during the day and a pillar of fire at night. When the cloud moved, the people followed and continued their long journey back to their homeland.
So there are actually a lot of symbols and images presented in the scriptures today that you could use to capture this section of the Bible, but I like to look at things deeper and differently. So here's what I made. I used this two-way sign and just put a mountain on it, just to add a little to it, between the arrows there. Now, why would I pick something like this? Well, let's see if you can figure it out as we go. So we're going to start with this in Exodus 19. On the first day of the third month after the Israelites left Egypt, on that very day, they came to the desert of Sinai. Now, this area in Sinai is where most of this week's story takes place. But we also learn here that while they've been free for 3 months since leaving Egypt, they also haven't established a new home yet. When they arrived, they set up camp at the base of a mountain, the same mountain where God appeared to Moses through the burning bush. Then Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain and said, "This is what you are to say to the descendants of Jacob and what you are to tell the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites." So Moses went back and summoned the elders of the people and set before them all the words the Lord had commanded him to speak. The people all responded together, "We will do everything the Lord has said." So Moses brought their answer back to the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, "I am going to come to you in a dense cloud, so that the people will hear me speaking with you and will always put their trust in you. Now, a couple interesting things happen in these verses. The main thing here is that God is promising to establish the Israelites as his treasured nation, a holy nation of priests to share his glory, as long as they fully obey him. God is establishing a covenant between himself and the Israelites. Now, if you don't know what a covenant means, it's just a fancy way of saying an agreement or a contract. Now, notice God has not given them any laws or rules to follow yet. The commandments don't come until a bit later. The significance of this being a covenant or a contract is that while telling them he wants to bless them and raise them up, he will only do so as long as they honor the terms of the contract, as long as they follow and obey him. It's a two-way deal. You follow and obey me, I will bless you beyond measure. Now, the people openly declare that they will agree and obey God. And, I mean, really, who would refuse a promise like that, right? Well, the other important thing is that God tells Moses the people will be able to hear him speaking. Now, this should establish more confidence in the people regarding God because they've seen him act, and now they'll be able to actually hear his voice. But it also adds more credibility to Moses that what he's telling the people is actually from God, because they're able to hear it for themselves also. So God tells Moses to prepare the people to approach the mountain when he appears, which he does 3 days later, arriving in a massive demonstration of his power and glory. There was a thick cloud of smoke, there was an earthquake, thunder, lightning, a loud trumpet blast, and a massive fire on top of the mountain where God was. Just a small demonstration of his power, maybe something like this. Now here's where something interesting happens that's never talked about. Remember, God said he would speak so the people could hear, right? God speaks the 10 Commandments to all of Israel. It's commonly said that Moses went to meet God on the mountain and God gave him the 10 Commandments on the stone tablets and he brought them back to the people. Well, that does happen, but not until after this moment. God spoke them aloud to the entire nation. Every Israelite heard these commandments spoken to them by God, so there would be no excuse for anyone who broke them. God knew that they could not live fruitfully as a lawless society because only chaos and corruption comes from that.
People are smart. They can handle it.
A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it.
And we'll actually see an example of just that a bit later. So between seeing and feeling the power of God and hearing him speak the commandments, the people grew afraid and told Moses to go speak to God alone and then give them God's messages. Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid. God has come to test you so that the fear of God will be with you to keep you from sinning." Now there is some big truth in this one verse that gets forgotten about in modern church teaching. Everyone wants to only talk about God's loving and forgiving nature so they don't scare people away from church or God. But the truth is, while God is loving and forgiving, we should also respect and fear God. And sometimes he will remind us of this to help right our focus. If we have no respect or fear for breaking laws, then establishing laws doesn't matter. Moses understood that and told the people that. We need to understand that and inform people of this part of God too. So Moses did as the people asked and went up the mountain to speak with God. God gave Moses several more laws and ceremonies to pass down to the people, which he did, and to which the people again agreed they would follow and obey. Twice. God then called Moses up to meet with him to receive the stone tablets on which God wrote down all these laws and commandments. Then Moses entered the cloud as he went on up the mountain, and he stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. Now while Moses is with God these 40 days, God gives him the tablets along with commands for how to build things like the ark and a mobile tabernacle or a home for God among the people for when they camped while on their journey to the promised land. He also gave several ceremonies and rituals that they needed to undergo, particularly the priests, before they approached God, so they would be at least ceremonially clean. However, something else happened while Moses was with God for those 40 days. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, "Come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." Now think about this for a moment. The Israelites as a whole had waited 400 years for God to deliver them from slavery, and they stuck with God until he delivered. But now, after 40 days of waiting on more direction from God, who, remember, they didn't want speaking to them? They gave up on him altogether in favor of fake gods they make up. Plus, in 40 days, Moses went from their leader and messenger of God to being just this fellow. Do you remember in last week's video when I talked about how God often makes us wait to receive blessings he promises because we're not normally ready to receive them right away? Yeah, let's just call this episode the latest exhibit of that. Now, for his part, Aaron, yep, the same Aaron who was by Moses' side literally throughout the deliverance from Egypt, doesn't say a single word to oppose them. In fact, he readily asks for gold from the people and creates a golden calf idol to be their false god. Wait, but was it really a calf? Maybe it was a water buffalo. Well, anyway, the people declared this golden calf god to be the real God who delivered them. They held a festival for it, offered sacrifices to it. Sound crazy yet? Well, God, knowing all this was going on, was obviously not very happy and told Moses about what the people were doing. And that leads into a fascinating exchange. I have seen these people, the Lord said to Moses, and they are a stiff-necked people. Now leave me alone, so that my anger may burn against them and that I may destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation. But Moses sought the favor of the Lord his God. Lord, he said, why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say, it was with evil intent that he brought them out, to kill them in the mountains and to wipe them off the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce anger, relent, and do not bring disaster on your people. Remember your servants Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, to whom you swore by your own self. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give your descendants all this land I promised them, and it will be their inheritance forever. Then the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened. Now, if you look at this just at face value, this is a fascinating exchange in its own right. At face value, you have God in another Noah situation, where the people have given up on God, and he is ready to wipe all of them out except for Moses. All Moses has to do for God to do this is to not interfere. But he does. He intercedes and speaks for the people on their behalf to God, desperate for him not to wipe them out. So God relents and decides to let them live due to Moses' intercession. Now there's a couple other things at play here when you look deeper though. Remember, God is preparing the people to receive their blessing, but he also has to prepare Moses to be the true leader they need, someone who views the people with the same heart God does. This is another key step in Moses' growth. Before, he was just following God's commands and leading the people. In this moment, Moses is showing he has grown confident enough to intercede and defend the people of God, defend the people to God. The other thing at play here, I'll get to in a minute. So to wrap this part up, Moses goes down to meet the people, gives them his own punishment for their failures, and he finds out who among the Israelites is truly ready to follow God going forward. God makes a new similar covenant with the Israelites that are left and sends them on to continue their journey while they also build the tabernacle, the ark, and other things God had earlier commanded to Moses. So about my see the story. Hopefully it's clear by now why I chose this. The relationship between God and humanity is a two-way road, which sets Christianity apart from other religions. If you think to other religions and these other gods, there are always one-way roads. It's always up to us to reach that place where their gods are. The true God of the universe doesn't operate that way. And he uses this mountain and this story to show that he comes down to meet us where we're at to help us. Plus, remember when I mentioned Moses interceding for the Israelites and how there was another thing at play that I would talk about? Just like that exchange is a bit of a mirror backwards to Noah, it's also a mirror forward to Jesus. Christ Jesus who died, more than that, who was raised to life, is at the right hand of God and is also interceding for us. So just like the Israelites, God would wipe us out, and rightfully, because of our sinful ways, if it were not for Jesus interceding for us, speaking for and defending us to God. But just as Moses did separating out the true followers, Jesus can only intercede for those who truly follow him. So do you? And now's your time to join the story for this week. So maybe share how you relate to any of the characters in the story. What similarities do you see between people today and the Israelites in this part of the story? How quick are you to give up on God when it seems like he's gone quiet, like the Israelites did? Or how does this story inspire or challenge you to live differently? So spend time this week reconfirming your part of the covenant with God, and I'll catch you on the next part of our journey.